There is no doubt that this is a pretty remarkable decision. It also has Kuina's own style. If you can't do it, just give up. But on the road, I will definitely try my best. This is what Kuina thinks. If this dream is out of reach no matter what, Kuina herself will give up, but in this 1-month agreement with her father, Kuina also has the courage to fight. This is his decision. It's also an explanation for myself. Seeing Kuina like this, Koshiro felt a little distressed and at a loss for a moment, and in the end he could only look at Lin Yan. Of course Lin Yan accepted it. After giving Koshiro a harmless look, he smiled at Kuina in front of him. Okay Kuina, you are still injured a little bit, so don't be too busy arguing with your father. In short, let's wait for another month after the injury is healed. Is that okay? Lin Yan smiled at Kuina, then looked at Koshiro on the other side. I don't have a problem with it, Kuina, just take good care of yourself during this time. Koshiro had no reason to disagree, so he nodded immediately. Well. Although she was somewhat dissatisfied, the two people in front of her said this, and after considering her current situation, Kuina could only reluctantly nod her head. Seeing his daughter nodding, Koshiro breathed a sigh of relief and cast a grateful look at Lin Yan. If Kuina tries her best next, he didn't even know what to do. The look in Koshiro's eyes made Lin Yan burst into laughter. As a swordsman, Koshiro is of course qualified, but as a father, Lin Yan said it's hard to say. Of course. Koshiro's love for Kuina is absolutely genuine, but at the same time, he is also really clumsy. With just one eye, he forgot that raising children requires coaxing. Okay, that's it for today, Kuina, don't go to training next. Listen to your father, he is very worried about you this time, do you understand? Lin Yan shook his head with a smile, and then warned Kuina again. Kuina responded quietly, finally no longer objecting. So the matter was decided happily. After exchanging pleasantries with the father and daughter, Lin Yan turned around and went back to his room. Although he has endless martial arts and can be said to have reached the pinnacle of mankind, any one of the various fighting skills in Lin Yan's mind would be shocking. But there are really not many suitable for girls. After all, even among the great heroes in mythology, girls are in the minority. So in a sense, what Koshiro said before is actually correct, and it is indeed quite difficult to implement. But it's not completely impossible. With this idea in mind, Lin Yan began to silently think about what to teach Kuina next. And at the same time, on the other side, after finally getting rid of her father's belated care, Kuina sighed tiredly in the garden. I can't stand it. I really can't bear it. Just thinking about her father's eyes full of love and tolerance made Kuina feel bad about herself. I'm getting goosebumps. After all, in my impression, Koshiro has always been a very strict father, especially in the practice of kendo, he is as strict as a devil. Kuina has always felt that there is something wrong with this. After all, her dream is to become the world's greatest swordsman, so it's absolutely right to be stricter. She has always respected Koshiro like this. But suddenly Koshiro showed his loving side. As if thinking of something extremely scary, Kuina couldn't help but shiver and looked around suspiciously. After realizing that there was no Koshiro around, he let out a breath. Can't get used to it. I will never get used to it in this life. Kuina couldn't help but scream inwardly. Then, very inexplicably, he looked towards the room where Lin Yan was. Yes, after finally escaping from Koshiro, apart from her father who really couldn't cope with the sudden change in her painting style, Kuina also had another doubt to solve. What happened before? Although she knew very well that this might just be her own unwarranted association, Kuina was still very concerned about the light that appeared that day. A girl's intuition told her. This all has something to do with Lin Yan. So in order to find out what happened, Kuina decided to do a little investigation. Of course, it would be impossible to ask Lin Yan directly about this matter. Kuina could also see that Lin Yan didn't seem to want to reveal it. So in this case, we can only tap from the side. Who is that? Come here. She happened to see a disciple passing by in a hurry. Kuina's eyes lit up and she immediately waved to the person. Senior sister, are you looking for me? Although the man looked confused, he still walked over very honestly. Kuina narrowed her eyes at him. I'm going to ask you a few questions next, and you must answer me honestly, otherwise you won't call me senior sister. Do you understand? Kuina said this very seriously. That's not possible. Ask, senior sister. The disciple immediately nodded very simply. As mentioned before, Kuina's popularity here is still very high. Let me ask you, when I passed out that day, how did I finally wake up? Kuina asked very seriously. Huh? The disciple was stunned for a moment, and then said truthfully to Kuina. I didn't do it, senior sister. After you passed out that day, the master kicked us out together with the master. Then you woke up, and I don't know anything else. The disciple said, a little confused. I understand, go and do your work. Kuina is such a smart girl. Naturally, she immediately noticed something was wrong. After all, if she was just trying to save herself, what was the point of driving everyone out? There must be something fishy. She sensed something was wrong very keenly, but on the surface Kuina didn't have any superfluous reaction and just sent the disciple away with a smile. Then he glanced at Lin Yan's room inexplicably and couldn't help but wrinkle his little nose. HMPH. I knew it wasn't that simple. Kuina discovered the blind spot. But even so, Kuina had no intention of confronting Lin Yan face to face. She is a sensible girl. Although he had already guessed that Lin Yan must have done something else, it was also true that the other party was his savior. Kuina would not make Lin Yan unhappy, so I have no choice but to continue to investigate. Thinking of this, Kuina made up her mind again. First she looked at the door of Lin Yan's room furtively, seeming to be thinking about something. Then the girl's eyes suddenly lit up. As if she had thought of some good idea, the girl quickly walked to Lin Yan's room door, stretched out her hand and knocked on the door. Who? Sir, it's me. My father said he has something to discuss with you. Do you have time? Yes. Lin Yan was in the room thinking about teaching Kuina something. He was stunned, but he did not suspect that Kuina had any ulterior motives. It was just that Koshiro had something to do with him. After responding, Lin Yan quickly opened the door. Where is your father? It should be in the front hall. Hearing Lin Yan ask this, Kuina was shocked, but she quickly calmed down and said this with some uncertainty. Lin Yan couldn't help but slowly typed a question mark. Should I look for myself? Lin Yan noticed something was wrong and looked at Kuina in front of him for a while, then suddenly smiled. I understand. Then I'll go over now and thank you for your hard work. Is the injury okay? No problem. Kuina stammered in reply, and was relieved when she saw that Lin Yan turned away without any suspicion. The girl couldn't help but pat her heart. Well, it's really hard to lie. I won't do it next time. After a deep self-examination, Kuina's eyes shone slightly as she looked at Lin Yan's room in front of her. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After all, she is a girl, and it is always difficult to resist novel things. Kuina soon and carefully started rummaging through Lin Yan's room. It seems to be an attempt to find out Lin Yan's secret. It was a lot of fun for a while. Lin Yan was on the rafter at this moment, watching Kuina search her room with interest, and couldn't help but sigh helplessly. Of course, he wasn't angry. Lin Yan still has some idea why Kuina did this. It's just that he has doubts about what he said before. No wonder. Kuina has been training in swordsmanship for so long and can be considered a moderately strong person. How could she not even be able to tell whether she had fainted or died? It is natural to have such an action now. Forget it. Let's go down and talk. Seeing Kuina probing around like a mouse, Lin Yan smiled helplessly. If he didn't give the girl an answer today, she would be in trouble later. Thinking about it, Yi Feng quietly disappeared on the roof. At this moment, Kuina is still searching carefully. What exactly is it? Kuina looked around carefully, as if trying to find something different in this room. However, everything seemed normal. This made Kuina a little disappointed. Why does it all look normal? Could it be that I am overthinking it? However, the girl's disappointment did not last long. Soon there was a sound of footsteps outside the door. Oops. Kuina suddenly panicked and knew that Lin Yan was back without even thinking about it. Why so fast? Kuina was screaming in her heart. But for this plan, she really couldn't think too much. She realized that Lin Yan was definitely going to come in soon. Kuina had no choice but to find a corner and get in immediately. Fortunately, she was small, so she could barely hide it. What tricks are Kuina playing? Lin Yan pushed open the door and entered in the next second. He only glanced at his room briefly, and he suddenly knew something in his heart, and he immediately complained deliberately. Kuina, who was hiding in the corner, couldn't help but tremble. Yi Feng smiled. After all, the current situation is really interesting. If you don't tease the girl in front of you, you will obviously be at a disadvantage. Thinking about it, Yi Feng deliberately pretended to be angry and blew on the table. It's so outrageous. Kuina is about to cry. Not to the point of. Didn't I just lie to you a little bit? It doesn't have to be like this, right? It's scary to be caught lying. I want to go home. Kuina was trembling. In the following period, it was obvious that his bad taste had set in. Lin Yan condemned Kuina's actions in an extremely angry tone, while also talking about various ways to take revenge. It's just crazy. Kuina was shivering. She did nothing, said nothing and didn't dare to ask. She could only huddle in the corner and cry without tears. If only she had known that cheating Lin Yan would have such horrific consequences. That would definitely mean that even if you were beaten to death, you wouldn't be able to come over. Curiosity killed the cat. However, where Kuina couldn't see, Lin Yan was just watching this scene with interest. He felt that it was almost done, so his tone slowed down slightly. Okay, no more joking. I admire you for being able to stay silent for so long. It seems you are still very strong. I don't blame you for waking up. Come out. Lin Yan said to the place where Kuina was hiding. When Kuina heard this, she was stunned for a moment. Then her pretty face turned red with embarrassment. It turned out to be a joke. Scared me. Patting her heart with lingering fear, Kuina couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, and then after realizing what the situation was, her pretty face suddenly turned red again. Then under Lin Yan's very funny expression, Kuina squirmed out from under the table, her face full of embarrassment. He looked like a kid who had done something wrong. Lin Yan couldn't help but smile. Okay, don't stand like this. Do I look like some kind of devil? Anyway, sit down and explain why you sneaked into my room. Lin Yan asked Kuina with a chuckle. Although Kuina couldn't see Lin Yan's appearance clearly due to the special state of appearance-less appearance, Kuina was still relieved when she heard Lin Yan's gentle tone did not sound like he was angry. After thinking for a while, the girl spoke directly. I want to know. How did you save me that day when I died, not after I passed out? Kuina looked at Lin Yan with some concern and asked. For her, this may be a very important answer. So when she asked this question, Kuina stared at Lin Yan in front of her almost all the time, hoping that the other party would give an answer. Isn't that important? Lin Yan also looked at Kuina in front of him and asked. Very important. However, Kuina's reaction was somewhat unexpected. The girl suddenly looked at Lin Yan in front of her very seriously. Obviously, she would not give up until she got a definite answer. To be honest, Lin Yan was also a little shocked by Kuina's stubborn temper. After thinking for a while, Lin Yan spoke again. Well, how about you tell me why you want to know the answer so much, and I'll tell you the truth about that day? It's a good deal, right? Because I want to repay you. Looking at Lin Yan in front of her, Kuina's face flashed with embarrassment for a moment, but in the end she said it very seriously. If I'm not sure what you did, I can't repay you with the same amount of reward. Kuina's tone was extremely serious, obviously. The girl did not take being rescued for granted, but always wanted to repay Lin Yan. But because I don't know what happened that day. Kuina couldn't determine how much Lin Yan had paid to save herself, so she launched this investigation. Hearing the girl actually say such words, even Lin Yan couldn't help but be a little surprised for a moment. Then he looked at Kuina with a flash of appreciation in his eyes. Gratitude. Yes, it's a good seedling. And since the words came to this point, Lin Yan simply stopped hiding it and suddenly waved his hand under Kuina's surprised gaze. Immediately, a set of 3 holy grails from the netherworld appeared on the table. Wow. She was still a girl after all. Kuina's eyes were attracted to the holy grail on the table almost instantly, her eyes filled with wonder. This is also a matter of course. As one of the highest level holy relics, regardless of other things, the holy grail of the netherworld is quite top-notch in terms of appearance. Hancock could hardly move his eyes away before. Not to mention the Kuina in front of me. Is this expensive? Kuina looked at the holy grail in front of her in amazement and asked cautiously. For some reason, she suddenly felt unconfident that she could repay Lin Yan. That's right, this is the thing that saved you. Lin Yan smiled and explained to Kuina. But don't worry, it's not a very expensive price. After all, it's just a simple treatment to save lives and heal the wounded. If it costs, well, it's almost 100 million Baileys. Lin Yan said with a smile. What he said was also true. The Holy Grail of the Netherworld is an extremely powerful item. If you want to change a person's life level, the cost required will undoubtedly be quite terrifying. The 3 girls around me before are examples. Even Lin Yan would feel pain at such a terrifying cost. But if it's just a simple treatment, it won't be a big problem. After all, Kuina was still alive at that time, and Lin Yan just used the Holy Grail of use to bring her back, and it didn't cost much. 100 million Baileys. However, even such a small expense shocked Kuina. That's 100 million Baileys. Because Koshiro is now living in seclusion, few people know that he is actually a strong man, so in Kuina's world. 100 million Baileys is already an astronomical figure. When I think of Lin Yan spending such a huge sum of money to save herself, Kuina suddenly felt a little uneasy about her conscience. But there was determination in the girl's eyes. I know, in short, I will find a way to return it to you. The girl said this very firmly. Lin Yan burst into laughter. Forget it. 100 million Baileys is nothing to me, so you don't have to. No. I must give it back to you. However, Kuina ignored it and ran out of Lin Yan's room after saying these words very seriously. Lin Yan was also a little dumb for a moment. Is this too serious? Lin Yan looked helplessly at the place where Kuina left, but after thinking about it, this might also be a good thing. 100 million Baileys is more or less. Since Kuina has this heart, Lin Yan will follow her. This reason can also be used to make Kuina be more serious in the following training. In view of this, Lin Yan didn't take it seriously. However, on the other side, after leaving Lin Yan's room, Kuina rushed to her father's room in a hurry. Kuina. Koshiro was drinking tea, and when he saw Kuina coming in, he immediately tilted his head in confusion. What's wrong? Are you so anxious? Father, we are extremely urgent. However, the expression on Kuina's face was so serious that Koshiro couldn't help but startled and asked quickly. What's going on? Is the wound open? With that said, he was about to come forward to investigate. But Kuina just shook her head. No, our family now owes 100 million belly. Is there any way, father, for me to make money? Koshiro. Koshiro. Looking at the screaming daughter in front of him, Koshiro first asked a series of question marks, and then fell into silence. After a while, he picked up the teacup in his hand and took a sip. That's it. That's it. Koshiro's reaction was very bland. After all, no matter what, he was known as a strong man when he was young. If nothing else, he still had some wealth. 100 million belly is not impossible to get. To be so anxious. Do you usually control her pocket money a little too much? Koshiro said he was emotionally stable. As long as there is nothing wrong with the wound on his head, everything else is easy to say. Koshiro looked at the daughter in front of him and had mixed emotions for a moment. This is his only daughter. Are you considering becoming a little richer? Looking at the furious Kuina, Koshiro sighed, raised his hand and motioned for his daughter to sit down. Then he asked. Who does our family owe 100 million belly? Please tell me in detail. It's the adults' medical expenses. Mr. Koshiro couldn't help but slowly asked a question. What the hell? Medical fees? Pay back 100 million Baileys. Isn't this a bit outrageous? To be fair, Koshiro's first reaction was that his innocent and lovely daughter had been deceived by a charlatan. Good boy. Courageous. I like. Thinking of this, a vein immediately popped out on Koshiro's forehead, but then he thought about it. There are not many people who can let Kuina call him Sama, could it be? Thinking about it, Koshiro also calmed down and asked Kuina. Kuina, who is the adult you were talking about? Oh, who else is there? Of course it's the gentleman who saved me. Kuina said without thinking. Hearing this, Koshiro's expression relaxed. Oh, that's okay. He calmly picked up the teacup and took a sip. Koshiro continued to ask with a calm expression. He said the medical fee is 100 million belly? Actually about this. Seeing her father's very calm face, Kuina was a little unsure. After a moment of hesitation, she chose to tell the truth. So in the next period of time, she told Koshiro how she sneaked into Lin Yan's room and what happened next. I see. After listening, even a strong man like Koshiro, who has seen strong winds and waves, couldn't help but sigh for a moment. Unexpectedly, there is such a treasure in the world? Koshiro felt that Lin Yan would definitely not lie. A big shot like that would not lie to others for just a small amount of money. Koshiro was sure of this. A mere 100 million belly could save lives. That's so worth it. Thinking about it, Koshiro suddenly looked at his daughter very seriously. Kuina, it's good for the two of us to know about this. You must not wear it outside, as that may cause trouble to others. We are repaying kindness with enmity, do you understand? Koshiro calmed down and warned Kuina very seriously. He is not a child. It is clear that once such a treasure appears, it will definitely bring countless troubles to Lin Yan. No wonder Lin Yan had to hide his existence before. I know. Although Kuina seemed to understand something, but her father said it so seriously, there must be no problem, so she nodded her head seriously. But father, the matter of 100 million Baileys. Well, you don't have to worry about this, I will take care of it. Koshiro smiled and waved his hand. How could he not tell that Lin Yan was just joking with Kuina? What a joke. A mere 100 million Baileys for a life. How can there be such a good deal? Anyway, Koshiro definitely didn't believe it. Needless to say, Lin Yan must have paid a much higher price than this. The so-called 100 million belly mentioned before was just a joke to Kuina. That being the case, you can't do any errands here, right? Koshiro thought to himself silently and decided that when Lin Yan left, he must give him a big red envelope. Of course, Kuina doesn't know all this. Koshiro's expression relaxed, and he chatted with his daughter for a while before suddenly coughing. Speaking of which, Kuina, have you decided how hard you will work in the next month? This. Hearing this, Kuina's face suddenly darkened. Honestly, she didn't know. After all, she has been training herself according to the methods given by Koshiro since she was a child. Kuina herself knows best whether it is effective or not. Say a month. It was just her final stubbornness. Koshiro obviously knew this. Looking at his daughter's pretty lost face, a smile couldn't help but appear on his face. So, in order for you to continue to grow, I took it upon myself to find a kendo teacher for you. You won't blame me, right? Koshiro said with a smile. Teacher. Kuina was stunned for a moment when she heard this, and then an expression of disbelief immediately appeared on her pretty face. What the hell, teacher? Can those ordinary swordsmen compare with the Koshiro in front of me? It doesn't exist. Seeing the distrustful look on Kuina's face in front of him, Koshiro immediately smiled even more happily. After coughing, he said bluntly. Kuina, your next kendo teacher is the one who saved you before. To be honest, in terms of kendo attainments, I am far inferior. Koshiro said this with some admiration. At the same time, his mind couldn't help but recall the table that was instantly turned into ashes that night, and Shunin couldn't help but have a hint of disbelief in his eyes. If it's that person, maybe it can really happen. This. As if she didn't expect the surprise to come so suddenly, Kuina couldn't help but widen her eyes slightly when she heard her father's words. Father, are you telling the truth? Then there is still a holiday? Great. Even a girl like Kuina couldn't help but cheer after hearing the news. To be honest, she's been craving progress for too long. Exercising day after day without seeing any results is a huge pressure for anyone. Kuina naturally does the same, but if it is Lin Yan, maybe it can. At this moment, Kuina's eyes shone with unprecedented light, the eyes of those who have seen hope. It was burning slowly like a ball of flame. It's best if you think so. Looking at Kuina, who suddenly regained her vitality and hope, Koshiro couldn't help but feel a flash of relief on his face, and he reached out to touch Kuina's head, which was extremely rare. Okay, since you have agreed, then hurry up and become a disciple. The master has also agreed, but remember, etiquette. Koshiro stopped talking helplessly, because before he could finish speaking, Kuina rushed out in a rage. Her pretty face was full of excitement. The so-called etiquette has probably been thrown out of the window a long time ago. Koshiro smiled helplessly. This little girl. I don't know who inherited it. But having said that, looking at the back of Kuina who had regained her vitality, Koshiro's eyes flashed with relief unconsciously. Fair enough. Go chase your dreams. The dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman. As an old father, I can only do this for you. 2 flowers bloom, one on each side. Just when Kuina was rushing over from Koshiro in a hurry. Lin Yan has almost decided what to teach Kuina next, and is about to tidy up and take a rest. Then soon, he heard Kuina's impatient knock on the door. My lord, are you in there? Listening to the girl's urgent voice, even Lin Yan couldn't help but burst into laughter for a moment. I'm coming. Standing up helplessly, Lin Yan walked to the door and opened the door for Kuina. Then he saw the pretty girl with a red face outside the door. It's certainly not out of shyness, but because of excitement. Kuina, what's wrong with you? Looking at Kuina who was in a strange state, Lin Yan couldn't help but ask. Don't be anxious, please speak slowly. I just heard my father say that you will be my teacher from now on, right? After being comforted by Lin Yan, Kuina reluctantly calmed down, then looked at Lin Yan in front of her and asked. There was a lot of expectation and a lot of enthusiasm in his eyes, and there was also a trace of undetectable nervousness. The action is quite fast. Needless to say, he must have known it from Koshiro. Looking at the excited and pretty Kuina in front of him, Lin Yan nodded with a smile. That's right, that's what I said. So Kuina, you've made your decision. Lin Yan asked Kuina with a smile. For Kuina, this answer has naturally been determined for a long time. Master. When she heard Lin Yan agreed, Kuina was overjoyed and immediately called her Master. I have to say, well, it's a bit addictive. Even Lin Yan felt a little elated for a moment when Kuina called her so harshly. It's really not fun. Seeing the excited Kuina in front of him, Lin Yan couldn't help laughing, and reached out to pat Kuina's little head. Okay, don't be so excited now. Your injury is not healed yet. It will take some time before I can teach you until you recover. As he spoke, Lin Yan's tone paused slightly. Don't worry, follow my method of training. As long as you complete it carefully, it shouldn't be difficult to meet your father's requirements in a month. Aha. Hearing these words, Kuina had no doubt that he was there and immediately nodded her head heavily. Her pretty face was full of joy. Naturally, there is nothing to say about what happened after that. After getting Lin Yan's promise, Kuina was in a good mood. Under Lin Yan's funny expression, he almost walked back in a daze. It seems, this girl has also longed to be strong for a long time. So naturally there is nothing to say about the time after that. After Kuina does her best to recover, formal training will begin in about a week. Today, Kuina woke up early on purpose, standing on the training ground in high spirits, waiting for Lin Yan's arrival. After this period of meditation, her injury has completely healed. Now Kuina is full of expectations. I don't know what kind of progress Lin Yan will bring to himself. The surrounding disciples who were still training also looked at their senior sister with some surprise. You must know that Kuina usually looks very worried. It's rare to be as happy as I am during this time. In a daze, everyone seemed to have returned to the past, when Kuina had just started practicing kendo. The smile on the girl's face at that time was extremely pure, so pure that it was a little intoxicating. Kuina, I'm here to challenge you. However, this beauty was soon broken. Zoro saw Kuina finally reappearing on the training ground, and jumped up without saying a word, shouting that he wanted to challenge Kuina. In fact, to be honest, everyone is almost used to this scene. But having said that, can you, kid, take a look at the atmosphere? Seeing Zoro's very stupid look, everyone immediately glared at him. Senior sister finally managed to put a smile on her face. Can't you wink? Okay, if you don't have it, we can help you. So in an instant, 4 burly men with rough faces jumped on the stage, with very unfriendly smiles on their faces, and left Zoro directly. Hey, what are you doing? I'm challenging you. Zoro was of course extremely dissatisfied. To be honest, I am just about to avenge my previous shame, so why are you joining in the fun? Thinking of this, of course Zoro started to resist and soon got into a struggle with a group of people. Hold him down. Grandma, I still don't believe I can't cure you, you little brat. I am so strong compared to this guy. Brothers, come together. However, as another person involved, Kuina was completely unaware of the farce on the other side. As everyone guessed, she had no intention of competing with Zoro today. When Lin Yan's figure appeared in Kuina's eyes, the girl immediately showed a happy smile. Master, you are here. Seeing Kuina's delighted smile, Lin Yan couldn't help but smile. After getting along for a while recently, he and Kuina in front of him had become quite familiar with each other. Then Lin Yan looked at Zoro with some confusion. That idiot. Ahem, what did Zoro do again? To be honest, this has basically become a daily routine, and Lin Yan has long been used to it. But like today, Zoro was outraged, still somewhat rare. Well, I don't know. Master, let's go quickly. However, Kuina didn't care about this at all and just kept pulling Lin Yan away. Lin Yan was also helpless. He also knew that Kuina's inner desire to become stronger was left to the girl. As for Zoro, I guess no one cares anymore. So naturally there is nothing to say about what happened next. According to the original plan, Lin Yan took Kuina to a very remote corner. Then the expression on his face became a little serious. Looking at Kuina, whose face was full of expectant smiles, Lin Yan pondered for a moment, and then slowly spoke to Kuina. In short, Kuina, please use Koshiro's swordsmanship for a while. I'll see if there are any problems. We'll discuss the rest later. After hearing what Lin Yan said, Kuina certainly had no intention of rejecting him at all, so she simply nodded her head. He has been practicing this swordsmanship since he was a child. It is naturally quite easy to use it at this moment. Kuina took a deep breath, and then started practicing carefully according to what Koshiro gave her. I have to say that Kuina is beautiful when she is fully devoted. Every move is quite satisfactory, with no flaws visible. It was as if the whole person had been immersed in the world of kendo. Kuina can't see anything else. All he can see is the sword in his hand. However, what Kuina didn't know was that Lin Yan on the other side was watching this scene with an increasingly weird expression on his face. Then about 30 seconds later. Okay, I know what the problem is, stop it. Lin Yan said to Kuina helplessly, Master? Kuina naturally stopped immediately and looked at Lin Yan strangely and asked. Any questions? There was a trace of anxiety in his tone. No problem, rather perfect, but perfection is the problem. Lin Yan smiled and reached out to touch Kuina's little head, and then gave this answer. Obviously, this answer is a bit too profound for the girl, and a question mark appeared on Kuina's face at the right time. Is there any problem with perfection? Although the girl didn't say much, her doubtful eyes clearly conveyed this signal. Lin Yan couldn't help but shake his head and smile. So this is the problem, Kuina. Let me ask you, you and your father Koshiro should use a set of swordsmanship, right? Well, what's wrong with this? After all, it's a family tradition. Kuina nodded very seriously and said. Lin Yan sighed helplessly. That's why I said this is the problem. Think about it for yourself. Koshiro is a man and you are a girl, but he uses the exact same swordsmanship. Is it really reasonable? Lin Yan asked Kuina. However, it was obvious that Kuina did not fully understand what Lin Yan meant, and instead showed a more puzzled expression on her pretty face. Is there any problem with this? My father has always taught me this way, and this set of swordsmanship is also very powerful. I don't think there is any problem. Ha. I've finally convinced you. Seeing that Kuina still didn't realize the seriousness of the problem, Lin Yan could only spread his hands and prepare to take action. Ah? Kuina couldn't help but blush and exclaimed. Teacher, master, what are you doing? Don't move, I'll help you adjust it. Now Lin Yan can be said to have entered a serious state. He ignored Kuina's little protest and used the girl's thigh to correct his movements. Kuina almost fainted. To be honest, if this scene had been played by someone else, Kuina would have passed away with a slap, but Lin Yan. Forget it, master must have his own reasons for doing this. Kuina thought helplessly. Of course, Lin Yan's movements were very fast and did not make the girl want to hit anyone. He quickly let go of his hand. Okay, keep it like this without moving, and try your previous swordsmanship again, with the first sword. After making sure that there was nothing wrong, Lin Yan spoke to Kuina. Oh. Hearing this, Kuina first responded a little aggrievedly, and then waved down the sword in doubt. Then the next second, Kuina's eyes suddenly widened. Soon? No, try again. As if she didn't believe in evil, Kuina waved the wooden sword in her hand over and over again, and the expression on her pretty face gradually became ecstatic. It's not an illusion. It's really fast. As a genius in the art of swordsmanship, Kuina could easily find something wrong, just by changing her movements. The speed of swinging my sword is about 10% faster. Don't underestimate this percentage. As we all know, the more advanced the training, the slower the improvement. Kuina has not clearly felt her progress for a very long time. But just today, I have improved by 1/10. Now, Kuina had no objection to Lin Yan at all. How's it going? Do you feel something's wrong? Seeing Kuina's surprised look in her eyes, Lin Yan smiled and said. However, Kuina did not speak. He just stared at Lin Yan, never leaving for a moment. Kuina. Seeing that Kuina's face looked a little abnormal, Lin Yan couldn't help but ask worriedly, thinking that there might be something wrong, so he walked forward to check it out. Ah. Then the next second, something unexpected happened to Lin Yan. Kuina's eyes suddenly turned red for no reason, and then with Lin Yan's confused expression, he ran into her arms. Crying is called a pear blossom bringing rain. She has waited too long. Only Kuina knows how stressful it is to grit your teeth and persevere in hard training every day, only to see no results at all. She is the senior sister in the dojo and a role model for everyone. He is also recognized as a swordsman genius. However, the eager eyes of everyone can sometimes turn into heavy pressure. Kuina didn't want to disappoint others, so she had no choice but to push herself harder until an accident happened in the end. Kuina has never told anyone about such pain. However, in just one morning, she improved by almost 1/10. Such progress finally made Kuina unable to hold herself any longer. The girl cried quite hard. Even Lin Yan was a little at a loss. But looking at Kuina with pear blossoms and rain in her arms, Lin Yan's eyes were exceptionally soft. Really, it is actually quite hard to work hard alone without seeing any hope. It's quite remarkable that Kuina can hold it in until now. Facing the girl in front of him, Lin Yan didn't have any harsh thoughts. He just held Kuina in front of him quietly without saying a word. Finally, after about an hour, Kuina's crying finally stopped. One can imagine how much pressure she suffered during this period. Kuina pushed Lin Yan away with some embarrassment. That. I'm sorry. Kuina blushed and lowered her head, not daring to look at Lin Yan in front of her. This is also a matter of course. After all, it's so embarrassing. Unexpectedly, she didn't hold back and actually cried in her master's arms for almost half an hour. Even Kuina couldn't bear it at all. Now she didn't dare to look at Lin Yan's expression at all. Afraid of seeing Lin Yan's disappointed eyes. Although because of the existence of the formless appearance, she can't see anything. But I'm just shy. A girl's feelings are always poetry, that's basically what it says. Seeing Kuina's shy look, Lin Yan couldn't help but laugh a little, but he didn't laugh out loud. After all, you can tell just by looking at it, right? If I laugh a little bit now, might Kuina in front of me be running away? So in view of this, Lin Yan could only cough. Well, okay. Let's continue training. Try to keep your tone as calm as possible, Lin Yan said. As the saying goes, as long as I am not embarrassed, others will be embarrassed. Seeing Lin Yan being so calm, Kuina couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He calmed down somewhat. In the next period of time, the two calmed down each other's moods, and then continued training. Lin Yan naturally continued to ask Kuina to practice again according to what she had practiced before. Of course, Kuina would not refuse after receiving the sweet offer, and immediately started in earnest. It's just different from before. This time, every time Kuina swung a sword, her eyes would be on Lin Yan unconsciously, as if she was expecting to receive guidance from him. The look of anticipation is self-evident. However, Lin Yan has given up treatment. What the hell is this? At first glance, it seems that they are all swordsmanship used by big men, with wide opening and closing. If a girl can practice this kind of swordsmanship, she will be able to make progress. Looking at Kuina, who was very serious but extremely expectant. The corner of Lin Yan's mouth couldn't help but twitch, and he was already greeting Koshiro frantically in his heart. Okay, stop, this is all meaningless. After a while, unable to withstand the increasingly obvious expectation in Kuina's eyes, Lin Yan finally raised his hand helplessly to signal the girl to stop. Aha! At this time, Kuina could be said to obey Lin Yan. Just as she was looking forward to how Lin Yan would modify it, the next second, Kuina heard a sentence that made her doubt her life. Throw away all these swordsmanship skills, you didn't practice them. Kuina was stunned. Although she trusted Lin Yan in front of her very much, when the other party completely denied her swordsmanship, Kuina couldn't help but puff up her cheeks angrily. Why? Feeling aggrieved, Kuina asked angrily. You must know that this is a swordsmanship that you have practiced for a long time. How could you forget it just like you said? However, Lin Yan's answer was quite ruthless. Because if you continue to practice these things, you will make no progress. Lin Yan said this very seriously. He had seen it before. Kuina's sword path was all open and closed, exactly like Koshiro's path. Of course that's okay. But the problem is, Koshiro's teaching of his daughter is completely based on himself. Good guy. Lin Yan didn't even know what to say. Are a cute and beautiful girl like Kuina the same as a bad old man like you? It's obvious. Koshiro himself is a swordsman and is definitely a good player in kendo, but it is the turn of teaching experience. Lin Yan said it was not easy to say. Even if you modify it a little for Kuina, I will consider it as your hard work. Of course, having said that, Lin Yan didn't mean to blame Koshiro. Just a simple rant after all. People in this world really don't know enough about the structure of the human body. Even most swordsmen have figured out the way of swordsmanship on their own. Naturally, no one knows how many detours it has taken. Koshiro probably does the same. So when training Kuina, Koshiro probably didn't even consider the fact that Kuina was a girl, and just passed on what he had learned throughout his life to his daughter. Dakai Dahe is not a sword path suitable for girls. Plus it's taught in the same way that men use it. The consequences can be imagined. So Lin Yan's teaching method was also determined. Looking at the very dissatisfied Kuina in front of him, Lin Yan just showed a calm smile on his face. I have almost understood all your swordsmanship, so let's start the first lesson. Within 3 days, I will forget everything you have learned. Hearing this, Kuina was immediately speechless. Seeing the dissatisfied look in the girl's eyes, Lin Yan just smiled. Are you still learning? Mean? Actually enlarging the move. Seeing the confident look of Lin Yan in front of her, Kuina couldn't help but grit her teeth and wanted to refuse. But thinking about my progress just now. But he couldn't make up his mind no matter what. Forget it. I can bear it. So in the end, Kuina just looked at Lin Yan angrily, and then nodded reluctantly. I see. Louder. I see. You want to practice swordsmanship with such a low voice. You can't hear me. Oh, you're so annoying, I know. Kuina looked at Lin Yan in front of her angrily. Although she was extremely dissatisfied with the guy in front of her, as a matter of fact, Kuina had no way to resist. I want to learn more powerful sword skills. You have to forget what you have learned before. Reasonable. After all, Kuina still believed in Lin Yan in front of her. After fiddling with the wooden sword in her hand, the girl sighed softly. I know. Anyway, I'll try my best to forget about it, but... At this point, Kuina's tone paused slightly, and a trace of grievance appeared on her face. I have been practicing this swordsmanship for more than 10 years, how could I forget it so easily? Well, about this matter. Then under Kuina's frightened expression, Lin Yan suddenly burst into hearty laughter. You don't have to worry about this, the mountain man has a clever plan. What do you want to do? Don't come over here. Although Kuina could not see the specific expression on Lin Yan's face due to the existence of the formless appearance, the other party's malicious laughter still made Kuina instantly alert. You. Don't come here. Realizing the huge threat, the girl immediately stepped back while looking at Lin Yan very warily. One thing to say. The girl's hunch was not wrong. Because next, Lin Yan is indeed going to do something quite extreme. But Kuina also forgot that facing Lin Yan, where did she have the capital to resist? Okay. Stop talking nonsense, and then use your sword to spar with me. Seeing Kuina's wary look, Lin Yan tilted his head and smiled. Then, seeing the girl's sudden change in expression, he stabbed the girl with his sword. It seemed that he did not expect that Lin Yan would suddenly make such a move. The expression on Kuina's face changed slightly. Then he took action without hesitation. At the same time, I was naturally a little unconvinced. Even if you are the master now, if you belittle my swordsmanship, I will beat you. With this thought, Kuina raised the wooden sword without fear. Then. There's no after that. This is also a natural result. After all, to be fair, when it comes to swordsmanship, even Koshiro can't stand a single move in front of Lin Yan. Kuina. It can only be said to be a moment of silence. So the girl soon discovered in despair that the swordsmanship she was so proud of could not even perform a simple attack. Even if he just wants to attack, Lin Yan will see through it first and then he won't be able to attack at all. You're a scumbag. Being suppressed to this point, Kuina was ashamed and angry, and couldn't help but coquettishly said to Lin Yan. Don't say such innocent things, keep going. However, Lin Yan turned a deaf ear to this and continued to attack with Kuina's furious expression. Of course. Lin Yan did all this not without reason. After all, according to Kuina's current level of swordsmanship, Lin Yan would be bullying a child by fighting her. Lin Yan is certainly not that boring. But through this battle, Kuina will forget what she has learned. You must know that the human body is a very delicate thing. Just like before, Kuina made progress just by slightly changing her movements, but if her movements are too far behind. Needless to say, the result is natural. What Lin Yan is doing now is exactly this kind of thing. Through the top-notch vision and judgment brought by infinite martial arts, Lin Yan can accurately judge the girl's movements every time before Kuina takes action, and then start to disrupt her. Disruptive from the start. So under Lin Yan's attack, Kuina was unable to use her sword skills at all. Because it was resolved from the beginning. That's why Kuina was angry and ashamed before. It's so frustrating. Of course this is not over yet. Where Kuina couldn't see, Lin Yan's eyes would flash with a strange light every time he disrupted the girl's movements. That's the power of Sharingan. Of course, because Sharingan's power was too overbearing, Lin Yan did not directly erase Kuina's memory, but chose this relatively gentle method. Then the result is. As the battle continued, the movements of Kuina's hands began to become more and more chaotic, and in the end, they could not even be formed. However, Kuina, in her anger, did not notice this. Okay. That's it for today's training, we will continue tomorrow. Observing Kuina's movements throughout the process, after realizing that it was almost done, at a certain moment, Lin Yan stopped with a smile, and then said to Kuina. You. Obviously being tortured by Lin Yan, Kuina looked at the hateful man in front of her angrily, as if she wanted to curse, but she didn't have the strength. Well, this place will continue tomorrow. However, Lin Yan did not give Kuina a chance to speak. After leaving such a sentence, he disappeared in an instant. Slip. After all, if she doesn't leave, if Kuina discovers something is wrong next, Xiao Nizi will probably start to grow up. So Lin Yan simply chose a tactical retreat. Seeing Lin Yan disappear in an instant, Kuina just curled her lips in displeasure and had no intention of chasing after him. After all, she also knew that she would never be able to catch up in this life. HMPH. Unscrupulous teacher. Staring at the place where Lin Yan disappeared, Kuina looked around to make sure no one was around, and then couldn't help but make a face at the place where Lin Yan disappeared. This seemed to make me feel a lot more relaxed. The spiritual victory method belongs to yes. Looking at the wooden sword she had thrown away, Kuina snorted slightly, picked up the wooden sword, and walked towards her room angrily. Unscrupulous teacher. Seeing as you have made me improve a lot today, I won't argue with you. Kuina thought this with some anger. I just don't know if Kuina herself has noticed that when she says this, there is always a faint smile on the corner of her mouth. Of course, the girl wouldn't dare to say that she was actually very happy. It's more or less about saving face. Recalling what had just happened, Kuina's steps seemed surprisingly brisk compared to her angry expression. After saying hello to her father, Kuina happily returned to her room. Going to test out the progress made today. There was nothing she could do, she hadn't felt any progress for too long. Being unable to hold back at this moment is naturally a normal reaction. Think so. Kuina tried her best to perform the movements that Lin Yan had given her before, and recalled all the details before. I remember. That's pretty much it, right? Adjusting her movements very carefully, Kuina nodded with satisfaction, and then suddenly swung the wooden sword in her hand. Then the next second, she was dumbfounded. Something's wrong. What's going on? Is this what I did? Looking at the soft sword path, Kuina couldn't believe it at all. Recalling Lin Yan's malicious laughter before, Kuina couldn't help but shudder. No, it's impossible. How could such a thing happen? Kuina shook her head violently, and then began to use the sword skills she had learned without believing in evil. Then 10 minutes later, hee. Kuina collapsed on the floor with a broken smile on her face. A moment later, a powerful roar erupted from the back courtyard of the dojo. You unscrupulous master, come out. One thing to say. If it weren't for the strong character developed through practicing kendo for a long time, Kuina would have almost cried. Finally managed to hold on tight, but that's the case. I'm also so angry. After all, this is the swordsmanship that I have been training since I was a child. I don't know how long I have worked hard to achieve what I am today. Is it okay to forget about it in a day? If Lin Yan were in front of her now, there is no doubt that Kuina would bite him without hesitation. But in the end it was just incompetent rage. After roaring a few times, no one paid any attention to her. Kuina could only force herself to calm down, and then tried to regain the skills she had learned. Then after several unsuccessful attempts, Kuina finally gave up. An angry and anxious expression appeared on her pretty face, but after all, Kuina did not immediately go to Lin Yan to settle the score, but went back to rest angrily. Anyway, if that guy can't come up with a reason to convince himself tomorrow, he will definitely fight for his life. What Kuina doesn't know is, it wasn't until he left the yard and went back to rest that someone hiding in the dark couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Kuina's temper. Walking out from behind the tree, Koshiro had a look of helplessness on his face. Although he didn't know exactly what happened, he undoubtedly felt his daughter's anger. And Kuina's swordsmanship. Thinking about it, an unpredictable look flashed in Koshiro's eyes. He hesitated for a moment, but finally did not step forward to ask. Now, just take that adult at his word. So time passed by and it was time for training the next morning. Kuina was silent, but looked straight at Lin Yan opposite her with a gloomy and pretty face. His eyes were full of anger. This is a matter of course, because they have been standing here for almost half an hour since training began. Or to be more precise, it was Kuina crouching on horseback, while Lin Yan was watching with leisurely attention. Kuina, who had never received such training at all, was naturally extremely puzzled, especially when she thought about how yesterday Lin Yan made her forget all the sword skills she had practiced, and her anger gauge was full. Finally, Kuina couldn't help but speak. Sir, are you kidding me? The girl's tone was extremely dissatisfied. In response, Lin Yan just smiled and shook his head. This is called Zama step. It's mainly to train your stability. As a swordsman, you should know how important this is, right? Lin Yan explained to Kuina. As the saying goes, if you don't train your legs if you're working out, you'll have to cough sooner or later. To a large extent, the principles of taijutsu are analogous to swordsmanship, especially for girls like Kuina, who must pay special attention to this point. Most of the time, extremely powerful swordsmen are far superior to ordinary people in basic skills. The so-called tall buildings rise from the ground, which is pretty much the truth. But, I don't think this is useful. Seeing Lin Yan rarely explaining to herself, Kuina instantly restrained her anger and asked in confusion. Although I am extremely dissatisfied with what happened yesterday. But Kuina is a good student. Well, you will understand after a while. In short, today's task is to stand like this. When you feel that you can't hold it anymore, you can stop. I will go find you some food first. Lin Yan said to Kuina with a smile. To put it bluntly, being a teacher is a new experience even for Lin Yan. Therefore, Lin Yan is obviously very concerned about his first disciple Kuina. So now Lin Yan plans to look for some food. Of course it is not the ordinary food in the dojo. As we all know, in this pirate world, the physical fitness of most powerful people is a bit outrageous, and this is inseparable from the food they usually eat. So Lin Yan's goal is very simple. Shoot some sea kings for Kuina to eat. Compared with ordinary beasts, sea kings are huge in size, and the nutrition in their meat is much higher than that of ordinary ingredients. It can be said to be a must-have product for home travel. At the average size of a sea king's, killing one would be enough for Kuina to eat for several months. In this East Blue, which is known as the weakest sea, it would be extremely difficult for ordinary people to deal with the sea kings, but for Lin Yan, who is a top powerhouse, this is a small problem. In view of this, under Kuina's somewhat puzzled gaze, Lin Yan just waved his hand and immediately turned around and left. Kuina was left pacing in place alone. Unscrupulous teacher. Watching Lin Yan leave, Kuina pouted in dissatisfaction, but quickly cheered up and continued to practice. As mentioned before, Kuina has always been a good student. That's how it was in Koshiro's hands. Of course, nothing has changed now. Then a few hours later, Lin Yan went to the deep sea and dragged back a sea king's. He finished processing it in front of everyone's shocked eyes, and when he came back to find Kuina. Call. This little girl is already asleep. And what surprised Lin Yan the most was that even after falling asleep, Kuina still kept walking, and her whole body was soaked with sweat. How good is this? Facing Kuina like this, even Lin Yan was speechless for a moment. After all, if she remembered correctly, when she left, she should have said that she could rest no longer. Thinking about it, Lin Yan walked forward with a speechless expression, reached out and hit Kuina hard on the head. Boom, pain. After trying her best to support her, she fell asleep due to lack of physical strength. Now Kuina naturally had no ability to resist. When Lin Yan knocked her, she naturally fell down immediately and let out a cry of pain. Then Kuina saw Lin Yan, who exuded a gloomy atmosphere. For no reason, seeing Lin Yan like this, Kuina suddenly felt uneasy for no reason, and couldn't help but speak timidly. What's wrong? You have the nerve to ask me what's wrong? Lin Yan almost laughed out of anger at her. As we all know, practicing yi requires moderation. For someone like Kuina to force herself to faint from exhaustion, it is not advisable in any case. But seeing the girl's pitiful look, Lin Yan couldn't blame her and could only sigh helplessly. Put your feet over here, Lin Yan said to Kuina angrily. Eh? Kuina was stunned, but before the girl could react, Lin Yan grabbed her feet and observed her carefully. Kuina's face instantly turned red, but she didn't dare to hide when she saw Lin Yan's serious look, so she could only endure the unusually cautious movement. Lin Yan, on the other hand, didn't think much about it at all. Tisk. It's really a strain. Looking at Kuina's somewhat red and swollen ankle, Lin Yan shook his head speechlessly. Fortunately, Kuina had been practicing sword skills for several years and had good talent, so he was much stronger than the average child. But it's inevitable to take a break. After confirming the situation for the time being, Lin Yan put down Kuina's calf and then darkened his face. Rest tomorrow. I can still do it, Kuina immediately retorted without hesitation. She finally saw the way to become stronger and she would not give up just like that. Then what greeted her was naturally Lin Yan's merciless rage. Boom, pain? Kuina crouched down pitifully with her head in her arms, and then Lin Yan's unquestionable voice came to her ears. I see. Kuina felt aggrieved, but looking at Lin Yan's unquestionable look, she could only nod pitifully, and finally gave up the idea of continuing to show off. Seeing this, Lin Yan's expression softened slightly. With a sigh, Lin Yan directly picked up the weak Kuina and returned to her yard, then turned around to deal with the seafood dinner he had just made today. Kuina sat in the yard in a daze, looking at Lin Yan's leaving figure with a complicated expression. This is the first time she has been hugged back like this. You must know that in previous training, after every training, even if it was extremely hard, Koshiro would just nod calmly and then quickly turn around and leave. Unconsciously, Kuina's eyes moved to her calves. Is it because of this? The girl couldn't help but murmur to herself. Then for some reason, the thought came to mind that I might as well get injured tomorrow, but in the end Kuina shook her head and threw it away. Unscrupulous teacher. Kuina couldn't help but murmur softly again. I just don't know if she has noticed that the tone this time seems to be a little different from before. I thought I would spend today resting like this. However, what Kuina didn't expect was that Lin Yan returned to the yard soon. And he actually held a huge casserole in his hand. Seeing the unimaginable scene in front of her, Kuina couldn't help but froze on the spot. However, before the girl could react, Lin Yan spoke. Kuina, do you have a bigger table at home? I'll get it. Her head was filled with questions, but even though she was confused, the girl took action immediately and moved the table she usually used to eat. Boom. Then with a loud noise, Lin Yan placed the casserole heavily on the table. Looking at Kuina on the other side who looked a little dazed, Lin Yan waved angrily. What are you doing standing around? Come over and eat. With that said, he opened the lid of the casserole. Suddenly, a very strange fragrance floated in the yard. A pot full of seafood casserole, the ingredients used appear to be very conscientious. Kuina was in a daze. Sir, as this? Of course I came here to patch it up for you. Lin Yan shrugged nonchalantly. It deserves to be said to be the weakest C. The food is just average. It took so much effort to find sea kings. It took me all the way to the deep sea to catch one. But the squid tastes really good. Lin Yan complained while picking up a large bowl and serving it to Kuina and placing it in front of the girl. Kuina was completely stunned, staring blankly at the large bowl of fragrant seafood in front of her. She stayed there for a long time before she couldn't help but ask. Is this for me? If not. Lin Yan rolled his eyes angrily. At your age, it is very important to lay a good foundation. If you want to keep up with the pace of my training, you must eat well. Sea kings like this are very good. Just catch this thing. It's a bit hard, but luckily I can only eat it for a month. He probably really regarded this place as a place for vacation. Lin Yan's words seemed more unexpected. Of course it's not because of Kuina being around. This is hard to say. However, looking at Lin Yan like this, Kuina suddenly laughed. Regardless of Lin Yan's nagging, she picked up the big bowl and took a sip of soup. It's delicious and very warm. Of course, compared to this delicious taste, the most comfortable thing is the warm current in my heart. There has never been anyone like Lin Yan in front of me. At the end of his training, he even came over to show concern. Even his most respected father has never done such a thing. This care and warmth. Kuina decided to hold on tightly. Looking at the girl's comfortable face, Lin Yan also laughed. What should I say? Your master's skills are pretty good, right? Yeah. It tastes good. Kuina nodded without hesitation. The smile that appeared on her pretty face at this moment finally looked like a girl in her prime. So naturally there is nothing to say about what happened next. The huge seafood casserole was quickly eaten by Kuina and Lin Yan. Considering that the shelf life of seafood is generally not very long, Lin Yan had already asked the disciples in the dojo to make it into dried squid when he came back. After saying hello to Kuina, Lin Yan went to check the progress. Just where Lin Yan didn't notice, the look in Kuina's back as she looked at him was filled with inexplicable emotion at some point. The other side. Koshiro, as usual, quietly hid behind the tree and observed the scene. When I saw a happy expression on Kuina's face, even a swordsman like Koshiro, who has experienced many storms in his life, couldn't help but have a look of relief on his face. Even if it has nothing to do with kendo, it's still a good day like this. Koshiro thought silently, then turned and left with a satisfied smile. Don't take away a single cloud, a night of silence. After a day of adequate rest and a casserole made from sea kings, Kuina almost fully recovered the next day. Isn't this talent for swordsmanship something to be covered with? Seeing the lively Kuina in front of him, Lin Yan was somewhat surprised and continued to train Kuina. Of course, we will continue to walk today. As the saying goes, there is no shortcut on the road to becoming the strongest, not to mention that Kuina's goal is to become the world's greatest swordsman. Lin Yan's requirements are naturally quite strict. Although there is talk, it is also the first time for him to be someone else's teacher. But I have never eaten pork and I have seen pigs running away. The ability of infinite martial arts has made Lin Yan the pinnacle of combat skills. The experience in his mind is much stronger than that of many so-called famous teachers. There is nothing wrong with teaching a Kuina. But in order to prevent the girl in front of him from exerting too much force again, Lin Yan watched patiently during the training this time. And give advice from time to time. Zamabu seems simple to ordinary people. But in the eyes of an apex being like Lin Yan, it is still very particular. Fortunately, Kuina is indeed an excellent student. Not only is his talent extremely outstanding, and he only needs simple adjustments to meet the requirements, but his understanding is also excellent. If he hadn't been practicing in the wrong way, he might have become a good swordsman long ago. For Lin Yan, there are endless physical skills, swordsmanship and other things in his mind. Naturally, there is no possibility of the so-called teaching apprentices to starve the master to death. There are almost no reservations about Kuina's teachings. So soon, the day passed like this. The end of the day's training was naturally about testing the results. Kuina confidently rushed towards Lin Yan, and then was easily swept away by Lin Yan's kick. Looking at Kuina lying on the ground, Lin Yan smiled heartlessly. Still a long way to go. I feel stronger than yesterday. However, Kuina, who was defeated miserably, showed no sign of being discouraged. Instead, her pretty face was full of excitement. She is getting stronger. Everything she felt told her this clearly. After several days of training, Kuina worked harder. Although she failed miserably every day, the flame in the girl's eyes became brighter and brighter. In this way, 3 days passed in a row. Today, Kuina still failed miserably as usual, with no hint of discouragement on her pretty face. Thank you very much for today too. Kuina stood up from the ground very quickly, and bowed to Lin Yan as usual. However, looking at Kuina like this, Lin Yan suddenly fell silent. After hesitating for a moment, Lin Yan asked. Kuina, tomorrow is your day off. How did you arrange it? Huh. Of course, continue training. As if she didn't expect Lin Yan to ask such a question, Kuina answered in confusion. Off day? How can I have such a thing myself? Sure enough. Lin Yan fell silent for a moment, then reached out helplessly and knocked Kuina on the head. Kuina slowly tilted her head, as if she didn't understand why Lin Yan suddenly knocked on her. Lin Yan was speechless. In the past few days, Kuina has been training himself, and he has finally come to his senses. This girl has no entertainment activities at all. Every day I start training as soon as I open my eyes, and then I study kendo until I take a break. It's still the same the next day, like a step-by-step robot. No, none of the donkeys in the production team are spinning like this. I originally wanted to test it out while tomorrow is my day off. In Kuina's grade, you must have 1 or 2 close friends anyway, right? Isn't it normal to go out shopping with friends and have some desserts on your day off? Lin Yan felt that he was still hasty. A very strange expression appeared on his face. Lin Yan paused, and then asked Kuina tentatively. Well, Kuina, how about you go out shopping and eat something delicious tomorrow? No way. However, Kuina refused on the spot. My father said that eating junk food will cause damage to the body, and I don't want to give up a day of training. Kuina said righteously. Sir, do you want to be lazy? That's not possible. Even if it's a day off, we have to. Good guy. Have you been taught a lesson? Before Kuina could finish speaking, Lin Yan waved his hand with a headache on his face and interrupted the girl. Looking at the serious face of Kuina in front of him, Lin Yan began to feel that he had a toothache. Don't you want to eat? In no mood. Then go play. It's better to train. Friend. Absolutely not, and you? I only have eyes for kendo. Lin Yan expressed that he was emotionally stable, and then pressed Kuina's little head. I'm going to the amusement park tomorrow. It's such a happy decision. Then, without giving Kuina a chance to speak, she turned around and walked away, leaving Kuina alone in a daze. Playground. What is that? Kuina tilted her head and thought, after all, in her world, this is a completely unfamiliar term. It seems that she has heard the kid next door to the dojo say it. Understood. Master, he must think that I should cut off these boring things, so he specifically said to go to the amusement park, just to let me see how boring these things are. You must make me persist in practicing and not relax. This is mind cultivation. Then I will never be able to disappoint Master. After a long time, it seemed that she finally understood the meaning of Lin Yan's actions. Kuina nodded her head very seriously, and then went back to prepare. Then the next morning, Lin Yan showed a toothache expression on his face and looked at Kuina, who had not changed in front of him. He even put on a saber and stood there with a majestic look on his face. What are you doing? You look like you're going to an amusement park. I'm afraid you're not going to play football, right? Lin Yan couldn't help but cover his forehead. Kuina. Can you explain to me why you dress like this when you go out to play on your day off? I think this is necessary. After all, we are not here to play, but to practice. Lin Yan's face darkened. Kuina. I order you now to change into a dress before you come out. Kuina left confused. Lin Yan stood there with a dark face. So is there anything wrong with what I said yesterday? Why is it understood like this? Even Lin Yan couldn't help but feel a little suspicious. Fortunately, he didn't have to wait long. Soon, Kuina appeared wearing a long white dress. It seems that he is not used to this dress. Kuina looks a little embarrassed. Is this okay? Almost. Put the sword back. Lin Yan nodded and said, but. Kuina looked hesitant, but before that, Lin Yan glared. You won't listen to what I say either. I see. Kuina nodded aggrievedly and reluctantly put the sword back into the room. Lin Yan finally let out a sigh of relief. Okay, I can finally watch it. Then, without any intention of explaining to Kuina, Lin Yan didn't give the girl a chance to speak, just took her little hand and turned around to leave. And in a place where the two of them can't see, a light flashed in the eyes of the two people. As usual, it was Koshiro who was hiding behind the tree and observing secretly. Watching Lin Yan pull his daughter away, an anti-smile immediately appeared on Koshiro's face. It looks like the development is going very well. As a father, he is also a swordsman with a somewhat rigid personality. Koshiro knows nothing about how to make his daughter happy. After all, we all know it. Father's love is as overwhelming as Mount Tai. After his wife passed away, he hadn't seen such a smile on Kuina's face for a long time. I originally thought that my daughter was just troubled by the lack of strength, and Koshiro didn't have any good solutions to this. But now it seems that doesn't seem to be the case. Seeing that Kuina looked confused but was obviously very happy when she left with Lin Yan, even a person like Koshiro couldn't help but burst into tears for a moment. So naturally he wouldn't stop it, and after what happened before, he had long since given up on the idea of letting his daughter continue her dream of being the world's greatest swordsman. So Kuina's happy look is what he looks forward to most now. Koshiro went back to drink tea with satisfaction. The other person hiding on the branch of the tree had shining eyes. Here's your chance to challenge. Seeing Kuina and Lin Yan leaving together, Zoro had only one thought in his mind. Ever since Kuina started training with Lin Yan, it is rare to see Kuina again in the dojo, so of course. Happy time for Zoro's daily morning challenge. It snapped and it was gone. Can this be tolerated? After all, for Zoro, the other disciples in the dojo are too weak and have no interest in challenging at all, and Koshiro is too strong and cannot see any further opportunities. So Kuina became the best challenger. At this time, seeing Kuina finally appear and go out with Lin Yan, how could Zoro endure it? That's it. In Zoro's very simple mind, there is no such thing as worldliness, at least not yet, so he followed him secretly without hesitation. On the other side, Kuina and Lin Yan were already walking on the street. Seeing Kuina on the side looking around with great vigilance, Lin Yan smiled helplessly. Don't be so nervous, we are just ordinary people today. Kuina looked unbelieving. Obviously, until now, she still thought that this was a test specially given to her by Lin Yan, so naturally she was still vigilant. Lin Yan didn't bother to explain this. Anyway, he really just took Kuina out to play today. I believe this girl will realize this soon. Probably. Lin Yan said he was emotionally stable, so naturally there is nothing to say about what happened next. With Kuina looking very alert, Lin Yan arrived at the entrance of the amusement park. Probably because today is a day off, it seems very lively here now. Many people came with their whole families, parents and their playful children, looking like a happy scene. It was obviously the first time for Kuina to see a scene like this, and she couldn't help but froze in place. For her, this is a very rare situation. After all, it has always been. In Kuina's world, only kendo exists. Kuina is actually very unfamiliar with ordinary people's joys and sorrows. There is nothing we can do about this. After all, it's a bit difficult to expect a staid swordsman like Koshiro to teach Kuina what normal life is, isn't it? Let's go. Let's buy a ticket and go in first. Let's relax today. Looking at the stunned Kuina next to her, Lin Yan smiled very gently. Looking at Lin Yan's rare gentle look, even though he couldn't see the adult's face clearly, the warm feeling was real. For some reason, Kuina didn't want to say no. Then, Kuina nodded and lowered her guard, preparing to follow Lin Yan in. Here comes the troublemaker. Kuina, I finally found you. Zoro, who had a green algae head on his head, jumped out of nowhere, stood behind and shouted at the two of them, and then rushed forward without saying a word. Next is my performance time, but someone reacted faster than him. The moment Zoro appeared, the expression on Lin Yan's face suddenly darkened, and then he kicked him out without saying a word. Go and die. Puff. Making a rather useless sound, Zoro didn't even see what happened, and flew backwards, hitting the bushes and fainted. By the time Kuina turned her head in confusion, Lin Yan had already retracted his foot and rubbed it on the ground in disgust. Grown-ups? Huh? Oh, it's nothing. I just stepped on something dirty, so don't worry about it. Lin Yan showed a hearty smile to Kuina. Kuina was silent for a moment, but I seem to have heard something just now. Your illusion. But I told you it was your illusion. Okay, let's go in. Kuina narrowed her eyes suspiciously, but in the end she nodded obediently. I see. Although still very suspicious. But looking at Lin Yan's extremely determined expression, Kuina didn't ask any more questions after all. It must be my own misunderstanding, the girl thought silently. So naturally there was nothing to say about what happened next. After easily dispatching the provocative Zoro, Lin Yan took Kuina into the amusement park. Although it is slightly different from what I remembered, overall it is still a very suitable place for leisure. These are the entertainment facilities. Lin Yan said it was not easy to say. After all, seeing a group of children flying around on chairs dozens of meters in the air, it was really hard for Lin Yan to resist the thought of complaining. I can only say that it deserves to be a pirate world. It's just that Kuina doesn't seem too interested in any of this. Ever since she entered the amusement park, Kuina has been very vigilant in observing everything around her. If the sword had not been left at home, Lin Yan would have no doubt that she would have the sword in her hand by now. Could it be that she still thought this was training? Lin Yan thought this rather strangely. After hesitating for a moment, he couldn't help but said to Kuina. Is there anything you want to play? No. The girl's answer was decisive. Where's the food? Junk food affects spiritual practice. There is no reason to argue with this guy who has no reputation. Looking at Kuina with a serious face, Lin Yan quickly gave up, and then under the girl's surprised eyes, he almost forced Kuina to the restaurant. All the recommended desserts are served. Without any intention of giving Kuina a chance to speak, Lin Yan spoke directly to the waiter as soon as he sat down. Etc. Kuina was about to refute, but Lin Yan narrowed her eyes and stared back, so she had to remain pitifully silent. At the same time, my heart was full of doubts. After all, under Koshiro's strict teachings, Kuina has never experienced such a thing, especially desserts that are said to make people fattening, and she has no connection with it. At this time, being suddenly dragged here by Lin Yancheng, it is natural to feel at a loss. Until the dessert was served, Kuina still maintained this expression. Looking at the table full of desserts in front of me, Kuina hesitated for a long time and finally asked cautiously. Kuina, do you know that in this sea, there is a fat woman who likes to eat desserts? A top expert. However, Lin Yan waved her hand to interrupt her, as if she already knew what Kuina wanted to say. Huh. Never heard of it. Although she didn't know what Lin Yan wanted to do when she suddenly mentioned this, Kuina still answered honestly. That guy has been eating desserts every day since he was born, and later. Lin Yan began to tell Kuina about Charlotte Linlin. As the Emperor of the Sea, Charlotte Linlin's strength was obvious to all. For Kuina, who is looking for strength, such a story is undoubtedly enough to arouse her interest. So Lin Yan started his own deception. First, he briefly talked about Charlotte Linlin's experience, and then described the opponent's strength. When Kuina couldn't help but start to envy, she finally saw it. So do you understand? Dessert has nothing to do with becoming stronger. A truly strong person must know how to enjoy life. Lin Yan lied to Kuina. That's it, I understand. Kuina nodded her head in sudden realization. Although she wasn't sure what Lin Yan meant by enjoying life, she was willing to give it a try. So Kuina carefully took a spoonful of dessert and put it into her mouth. The girl couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. After all, as we all know, no girl can resist a delicious dessert, let alone Kuina, who has never tried it. So the girl soon fell into trouble. There was no need for Lin Yan to ask for guidance. Soon, Kuina wiped out all the desserts in front of her. Children can be taught. After glancing at Kuina with satisfaction, Lin Yan stood up. Okay, next place. But this is also part of training. I see. So, after realizing that Kuina could not be persuaded by conventional methods, Lin Yan decided to lie to the end. Under the guise of training, I started taking Kuina out for fun. Fortunately, Kuina is indeed a very obedient student, and she did not resist at all Lin Yan's various requests that she considered very strange. And in this process, I don't know if Kuina noticed it, but a cheerful smile gradually began to appear on her face. The two people's play did not end until nightfall. Looking at Kuina, who was still unfinished in front of her, Lin Yan smiled softly. Let's go somewhere else on our next day off. This time Kuina didn't object, she just nodded her head slightly, her eyes gleaming with anticipation and excitement. At this moment, Kuina looks like what a young girl should look like. Regarding Lin Yan's strange, practical way, today, Kuina didn't ask any more questions. Don't ask if it has any effect, and don't ask why. Kuina is not an idiot. Naturally, I had the answer in my heart. But she didn't want to refuse at all. Just like the seafood dinner served by Lin Yan before, the girl decided to hold on to this concern. Just looking at Lin Yan's slightly smiling side face next to her, Kuina was stunned for no reason. Then when Lin Yan turned his head to look at her, he quickly looked away with guilt. With the moonlight, the shadows of the two people are connected together on the ground, getting longer and longer. So time passed by and it came to the morning a week later. This day, Lin Yan, as usual, looked at Kuina Zamabu in the yard, and then suddenly nodded. I have to say that Kuina's talent is quite good. He is definitely a good candidate for practicing swordsmanship. No wonder Koshiro pinned his dream of becoming the world's greatest swordsman on Kuina. After just over a week of training, I have already seen initial results. In this case. Okay Kuina, that's it for today's Zamabu. Let's take a rest first. Lin Yan said to Kuina. Then under the girl's confused gaze, a hearty smile appeared on her face. It's time to start teaching you some sword skills. Hearing Lin Yan say this with a smile, Kuina was obviously stunned for a moment, and then she couldn't help but get excited. Finally, it's time to practice your sword skills. God knows how long Kuina has been looking forward to this day. The so-called young man's nature is probably like this. Kuina is extremely eager to become stronger quickly. It is just because of her dependence and trust on Lin Yan in front of her that she only restrained her restlessness and carried out boring training in the past few days. Get some rest. We'll start in an hour. Seeing Kuina's excited look, Lin Yan smiled and immediately said to the girl. Of course. Kuina had no objection at all, and immediately began to rest, and took out Lin Yan to replenish the strength of her Sea King's dried fish. So an hour later, Kuina stood in front of Lin Yan handsomely, her bright eyes full of obvious expectations. Teacher, do you want to teach me your sword skills? Kuina asked Lin Yan very expectantly, although it was just a glimpse. But to this day, he still remembers Lin Yan's style of defeating his father with one sword, and Kuina is fascinated by that power. However, Lin Yan just shook his head. Didn't I tell you before? That kind of style is not suitable for you. What I want to teach you today is another kind. Then under Kuina's somewhat puzzled eyes, Lin Yan held the wooden sword and slowly began to demonstrate it for the girl. Then soon, Kuina's little head was filled with questions. Lin Yan's sword movement looks very graceful. Just one glance at Kuina made her fall in love with such sword skills. But, is this too slow? Looking at Lin Yan's elegant but very slow sword moves, Kuina's little head was filled with big question marks. After all, it was in her impression. Any powerful swordsmanship is sharp and fast, but Lin Yan in front of him is like an old man walking in the park. Although he is very elegant, his speed. Don't be so hasty in making conclusions, why don't you give it a try? Seeing through Kuina's doubts at a glance, Lin Yan smiled at the girl. Kuina was very obedient, so she directly picked up her wooden sword, took a deep breath, and slashed at Lin Yan as fast as she could. Even though he had forgotten the swordsmanship he had practiced before because of Lin Yan's methods. But after long-term training, Kuina's strength is still very good. Even just slashing randomly is enough to make the disciples in the dojo feel the differences in the world. However, soon, Kuina's eyes widened in shock. No. Flaws? The girl murmured in surprise. Although Lin Yan kept his slow movements and did not look threatening at all, whenever he raised his sword to strike, Lin Yan's sword was always in front of him just right. It was as if he already knew how to attack. What's even more outrageous is, his movements were obviously slow enough for anyone to see clearly, but Kuina, who was bursting at his fastest speed, couldn't find any flaws. I don't believe it, there must be something wrong with the way I attack. Kuina gritted her teeth in disbelief. After all, the swordsmanship in front of her was simply challenging something she had believed in so far. Of course Kuina would not be convinced. So Kuina calmed down, gritted her teeth and slashed again. Immediately, the girl's expression suddenly changed. I saw Lin Yan blocking the attack as slowly as before, and then suddenly turned back, all his power concentrated at one point at this moment. What burst out was naturally so rapid that it was difficult to discern with the naked eye. Kuina had no time to react. In the end, she could only subconsciously place the wooden sword in front of her. Immediately, a sound of piercing the air suddenly came to the girl's ears. Kuina stared blankly at the wooden sword that had been pierced through. Even though they were made of the same material, Lin Yan's wooden sword could easily penetrate his own wooden sword without any damage. Seeing Kuina's doubtful eyes about life, Lin Yan smiled. How about it? This is what I told you before, the swordsmanship suitable for your training. Kuina, do you know how snakes attack? Facing Kuina, whose pretty face was dull, Lin Yan slowly explained. As said before, Koshiro's idea is correct in a sense. In most cases, girls really cannot compete with men in strength. This is determined innately. The things involved are very complex, including the distribution of muscles, skeleton structure, etc. Generally speaking, there is indeed an inherent gap in the explosive power between the two. But as the saying goes, when God closes the door, he will always open the window. Compared with men, girls also have unique advantages in other aspects. For example, flexibility. The swordsmanship Lin Yan demonstrated just now is a swordsmanship that maximizes flexibility and is extremely suitable for Kuina to practice. As Lin Yan said, it's like a snake. When attacking, concentrate all the power of the whole body to one point, and then use the unique excellent flexibility of girls to amplify this power dozens of times to achieve the same effect as before. Something to say, it's like turning your body into a flexible whip. The explosive force generated in an instant is enough to make up for any lack of strength, and even bring unimaginable powerful penetration. Before bursting out with power, this set of swordsmanship can also be like a coiled snake. Although its movements are slow, it can hide all its weaknesses. It is an extremely powerful defensive swordsmanship. You can advance to attack or retreat to defend. This is what Lin Yan will teach Kuina next. In fact, This theory is still applicable even in a world without peak experts. The more outstanding athletes are, the more they will emphasize the flexibility, explosive power and toughness of their muscles, which have never been opposites. It's just that there are too many powerful monsters in this world, but there are only a few female swordsmen. I am afraid that only swordsmen who have reached the level of Hawkeye will realize this. Seeing Kuina's thoughtful eyes, Lin Yan laughed again. So in the final analysis, Koshiro's training method is only suitable for a strength monster like Zoro. If Kuina you can learn this set of swordsmanship, there should be no problem with a 1-month agreement. After hearing this, Kuina was stunned, and then she rushed towards Lin Yan with a very rare happy expression. Master, I like you the most. For Kuina, this is probably a very rare situation. Even Lin Yan couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Fortunately, Kuina seemed to realize something was wrong quickly, and stepped away with a red face, explaining hesitantly. I'm just too happy. I don't mean anything else. Lin Yan couldn't help but burst into laughter. Is the little girl still shy? Lin Yan shook his head, pretending that nothing happened just now, and beautifully ignored Kuina's slightly angry look, and waved to the girl. Anyway, Kuina, please lie down on your back first. I want to tell you about the key points of swordsmanship training. You cannot practice it immediately in your current situation. I see. Although she was very unhappy with Lin Yan's calm performance, her swordsmanship was still good, so Kuina quickly lay down on her back. Then she felt Lin Yan grab her foot. Kuina's expression suddenly became unnatural. Her face instantly turned red. Kuina hesitated for a long time before asking in a low voice. Then, Teacher, what is this? Don't worry about it, this is a necessary correction. However, Kuina soon forgot about her shyness, because Lin Yan showed a hearty smile like a devil on her face. Before practicing, let me stretch your ligaments first. Before Kuina even realized what was happening, she felt an unimaginable amount of pain instantly hit her. Then soon, the girl's miserable screams came from the mountain behind. It's broken, it's going to be broken, So time flew by and a week flew by again. Recently, everyone in the dojo discovered something unusual. The senior sister Kuina, whom they had not seen for a while, finally appeared in the dojo again for morning training. However, the abnormality also started to occur at this time. Do not know why. Everyone always feels that Kuina seems to be a little unmotivated. She always looks sick, and is very weak when wielding the sword. She looks like an old woman walking in the park, but her expression is very serious. And every time when I first come in the morning, Kuina's pretty face is always full of fear, as if she had just experienced something terrible. Such a weird situation. The disciples in the dojo were naturally confused. Many people speculated whether their senior sister was sick or feeling unwell, so they rarely talked to Kuina during this period. Except for one person. Kuina, I'm here to challenge. This is the 10th time you have rejected me. Same as usual. As soon as he saw Kuina appear in the dojo, Zoro jumped out without saying a word. Although Lin Yan kicked him and sent him to lie down all afternoon, this incident did not hinder Zoro's desire to continue to become stronger. Kuina is the strongest swordsman here besides Koshiro. Zoro naturally will not miss any opportunity to challenge. In a few days, however, Kuina only glanced at him faintly. In a few days, I will beat you down. Kuina said this very confidently, as if she no longer paid attention to Zoro in front of her. Okay. This is what you said. Then as usual, Zoro was obviously fooled and turned around and left with satisfaction. Everyone in the dojo was silent. Something's wrong. Something is definitely wrong. You must know that Kuina in the past would never refuse anyone's challenge. Although she was merciless, she never refused. What's going on lately? The disciples in the dojo are full of questions. In fact, the reason for Kuina's refusal is also very simple. Because Lin Yan said that he is not strong enough, especially since the early training has not been completed, now is not the time for actual combat. Kuina is a very obedient girl. Naturally, he followed Lin Yan's advice. Besides, she really can't get excited. Recently, even Kuina couldn't stand the feeling when Lin Yan made various strange moves every morning. But Lin Yan said this is necessary. Kuina felt like she was going to fall apart. This is the reason why she looks sick every day recently. It is precisely because Lin Yan said that these trainings should be done step by step, so after practicing in the morning, Kuina will reappear in the dojo to familiarize herself with the swordsmanship. And I don't know if she thought of something interesting, but Kuina's pretty face turned a little rosy unconsciously. After all, she is a girl anyway. During this period of contact with Lin Yan, Kuina was also slowly changing. Especially after the training on flexibility mentioned by Lin Yan begins. Kuina dared not look directly at Lin Yan anymore. Of course she won't tell anyone this. I won't tell Lin Yan that I have actually had a lot of strange thoughts recently. I wouldn't say that what I look forward to most now is my rest day every week. The so-called girl's feelings are always poetry, which is basically what it means. Of course, more importantly, Kuina finally sees hope. Hope to become stronger. Although every day's training is very uncomfortable, and she feels listless all day after each time, Kuina can clearly feel it. I am getting stronger. The burst of speed is slowly exceeding his own limit, and there is no upper limit in sight. At least until the end of training, Kuina cannot imagine what he will become. This expectation is for girls. Undoubtedly something I haven't tasted in a long time. And all of this was brought about by that man. Thinking back to Lin Yan's mysterious but gentle figure. As a result, the smile on Kuina's face also increased a lot. Change is always a gradual thing. At least in the eyes of everyone in the dojo, my extremely serious senior sister has indeed become much gentler in recent times. So although everyone was surprised, they didn't ask any more questions. The days went on peacefully. Then one day, Kuina suddenly appeared in the dojo in high spirits. This time, facing Zoro's challenge again, Kuina did not refuse, but just put on a trustworthy smile on her face. Just in time, let me see how much you have grown recently. For the first time, Kuina did not refuse the challenge. Instead, he looked at the challenger in front of him proudly, changing his usual lack of enthusiasm, with fire burning in his eyes. According to Lin Yan, her first phase of training is finally over. Kuina also wants to confirm how strong I have become now. Wow. Seeing that Kuina finally accepted the challenge, the disciples in the dojo were in an uproar, and then quickly spread the news. Soon, everything that moved was there. Even Lin Yan and Koshiro followed suit. Sir, thank you very much for the recent period. Seeing Lin Yan appear, Koshiro immediately smiled and cupped his hands in thanks. Since this man came to the dojo, he has witnessed many changes. First, he saved Kuina's life. Then he began to teach Kuina swordsmanship. Koshiro can see that Kuina has really changed a lot in recent times. Not only is the previous gloomy temperament completely gone, but there are also many smiles on his face. All these changes were brought about by Lin Yan. Koshiro's thank you was sincere. Now, he no longer cares whether Kuina can become the world's greatest swordsman, as long as he can see the smile on Kuina's face every day. As a father, he has nothing to be dissatisfied with. I just serve as an introduction. In the final analysis, Kuina's talent is very good, otherwise even I wouldn't be able to train it in a short time. Lin Yan said with a smile. Then I'm looking forward to it. Koshiro also laughed. Recently, although he has felt the changes in Kuina, he has never watched Lin Yan's training content. Every powerful swordsman has his own secrets, and he also has unique skills that are not spread to others. As a swordsman, Koshiro knows this very well. Although Lin Yan himself didn't seem to care much, Koshiro was still very clear about the rules and had never been involved in Kuina's training. At this point Kuina is seen accepting Zoro's challenge. Koshiro also wanted to confirm. How much progress has Kuina made now? So with excitement and expectation, Koshiro and Lin Yan took their seats with smiles. At the same time, Kuina and Zoro also took out wooden swords. You attack first. Kuina looked proudly at Zoro in front of her, her clear eyes full of seriousness. Lin Yan taught her. Don't underestimate any opponent, not to mention Zoro's qualifications are also top-notch, so Kuina will naturally not rely on him. Good. Naturally, Zoro didn't hesitate at all. His swordsmanship was unstoppable. When Kuina said this, he immediately rushed forward without saying a word. Then. There's no after that. Whoosh. Zoro didn't even realize what happened. He only saw a flash of sword light, and then he flew out. That is. Koshiro stood up in a flash, looking at Kuina with eyes full of disbelief. That kind of instant burst of speed? Is this really Kuina? Koshiro has some doubts about life. After all, of course he knew his daughter very well. Kuina had never had such speed before. This is a level difference. As a swordsman, Koshiro could certainly see Kuina's movements clearly, but it was precisely because of this that he was extremely shocked. Of course, the one who was even more shocked was Zoro, who was involved. Where am I? Who I am? What just happened? Zoro people are going to be stupid. He just saw a white light, and then flew out directly. Even Zoro was a little unable to accept it. I don't believe it. Come again. Zoro gritted his teeth, jumped up from the ground, and rushed towards Kuina again. Then he saw the other party swinging the wooden sword slowly. Are you looking down on me? Zoro roared angrily, and then slashed at Kuina mercilessly. I don't know if it's luck or coincidence. Kuina's wooden sword just happened to be lying across his sword, and then he slowly moved away as if nothing had happened. Zoro's whole body is in bad shape. There must be a limit to looking down on others. Who are you slowly looking down on? Then Zoro slashed at him again. Then he flew out again. As before, I still didn't realize what was happening. After Lin Yan's training, Kuina's explosive speed, which was already stronger than him, was no longer something Zoro could capture. Huh? That set of sword skills. And Kuina's moves? Koshiro also saw some clues at this time, showed a thoughtful expression, and turned to look at Lin Yan beside him. Could this be it? Yes, this is the swordsmanship suitable for Kuina as I told you before. Lin Yan nodded very calmly. For him who has endless martial arts training, this is not an amazing skill. As said before, Kuina now has just completed the first stage of training. What's even more exaggerated is yet to come. For those heroes who can reach the divine realm, Kuina is still far behind. But it was enough to make Koshiro look shocked. You are indeed a great talent. Kuina is so lucky to have such a teacher. Koshiro said this with great admiration, although Lin Yan was very understated. But as a swordsman, he knew how incredible what Lin Yan had done was. Even after experiencing many storms, Koshiro has never seen such incredible sword skills. Although Kuina is obviously not enough, but there is no doubt about it. A broad road has been laid out in front of the girl. No wonder the smiles on her face have become more and more frequent in recent times. Koshiro thought with satisfaction. At the same time, I am also looking forward to what kind of surprise Kuina can bring to me after the agreement expires. Lin Yan didn't notice Koshiro's satisfied expression. Watching Kuina walk towards Zoro, Lin Yan just showed a smile on his face. It's over. Yes, it's over. At the moment when Zoro was unconvinced and wanted to jump up again, Kuina stepped forward and struck a blow, and then Zoro fainted very neatly. The outcome is decided. Looking at Zoro who fainted easily, Kuina nodded with satisfaction, then turned her head and looked straight at Lin Yan in the stands. That confident expression seemed to say, "Teacher, I did it." Seeing Kuina's victorious smile, Koshiro, who was sitting in the audience, said nothing, but the joy and anticipation in his eyes could not be hidden at all. In fact, Kuina is not the only one who is looking forward to progress. As a father, even if he didn't say it, he was worried about Kuina's growth. Especially after Kuina almost died, he had given up on his inner dream. But now, everything seems to have taken a turn for the worse. Seeing the ring full of proud daughters, Koshiro pondered for a moment, and then slowly made a decision. Being a father, there's not much he can do to support Kuina's dream. You can only fight with all your strength when the promise comes. This is the highest courtesy a swordsman can give to another swordsman. Koshiro slowly stood up and left. Koshiro didn't say anything until he left, but Lin Yan looked at his leaving figure with a thoughtful look in her eyes. After Zoro's tragic defeat, the crowd dispersed in twos and threes, and the disciples in the dojo began training day after day. Kuina came to Lin Yan happily. "Teacher, I did it." The girl's tone was full of excitement. After experiencing loss and confusion, and forgetting the kendo she once learned, Kuina finally saw the way forward. You can still become stronger. The girl's gratitude to Lin Yan in front of her is beyond words. Even though she still doesn't know the name of the man in front of her, she still regards him as the most important person. Still a long way to go. However, facing Kuina like this, Lin Yan just smiled and stretched out his finger, lightly tapping the girl's forehead. If you don't keep working hard, you will be caught up soon. No way. Kuina couldn't help but puff up her cheeks slightly when she heard this. I want to become the world's greatest swordsman. The girl said this categorically. After several years, Kuina finally spoke out loud about her dream again. Her clear eyes seemed to be burning with fire. The greatest swordsman in the world. Lin Yan couldn't help but laugh. I wonder what Kuina will think when she sees herself standing in front of her at the end of her dream. Lin Yan thought this in a rather wicked way. Of course, this is a story for later, so let's put it aside for the moment. The current Kuina is still far from reaching that level, but it is still far away. So under Kuina's confused expression, Lin Yan waved his hand. Let's not talk about this for now. Come with me. I have something to give you. With that said, without any intention of explaining to Kuina, Lin Yan turned around and walked towards the training ground where the two of them were training. Oh. Although Kuina was very confused, she was used to obeying Lin Yan's words. She just responded and followed the man's footsteps. What do you want to give to yourself? New sword skills. Kuina thought this with some anticipation. Under the girl's expectation, the two returned to the back mountain in a short time. Facing Kuina, who was standing handsomely in front of her, her eyes full of expectation, Lin Yan smiled. Kuina, the 1-month appointment is coming soon. Hearing this, Kuina fell silent instantly. Indeed, the agreement with my father is about to expire. Unless he can produce results that can convince Koshiro in a month, his dream of finally seeing the future may end in vain. Even Kuina is feeling the pressure, but the girl was not afraid. He wants to become the world's greatest swordsman. Stopping because of fear is completely fatal. Thinking about it, Kuina's eyes slowly became firm, and she suddenly raised her head and looked directly at Lin Yan in front of her. The teacher suddenly said this, is there something that can help me win? Smart, Lin Yan smiled and snapped his fingers. Anyway, Koshiro is also a swordsman. At Kuina's current age, it is too early for a young girl to defeat a veteran swordsman like Koshiro. Not to mention that it has not been more than a month since the girl relearned the art of swordsmanship. But it's not entirely impossible. Lin Yan is a very proud guy. Ta Lin is no weaker than others in his life, and the students he teaches must naturally be top-notch. So in view of this, Lin Yan planned to give Kuina something. Even if you are facing a swordsman, you can still win the trump card. Kuina, watch, this is what I'm going to give you next. Under Kuina's expectant eyes, Lin Yan suddenly took a deep breath, and then in the next moment, layers of airwaves burst out around Lin Yan. This is. Kuina's eyes widened instantly. It was different from any power he had seen before. It seemed to be some kind of secret method to strengthen the body, and the sense of oppression it brought was extremely terrifying. Seemingly satisfied with Kuina's reaction, Lin Yan smiled and then regained his aura. Did you see anything? Teacher, your muscles just now. After hesitating for a long time, Kuina said somewhat unconfidently. Sure enough, her talent is very good. Hearing this, Lin Yan nodded with satisfaction. I'm aware of it a little bit, but it's not enough. This is a technique that mobilizes all the power in the body instantly. It can allow you to exceed the limit in a short time, but it cannot last long and consumes a lot of physical strength. Under Kuina's somewhat puzzled expression, Lin Yan slowly explained. The human body is a huge treasure. There is no doubt about this. In fact, even an ordinary person, based on numerical calculations alone, has tons of arm strength and other powers beyond cognition. But often, these powers are completely unusable. Because there is a unique protective mechanism in the human body. In order to prevent excessive force from harming the body, humans will strictly limit the power they can use, including the power to provide heartbeating, etc., which are all restricted areas for humans. What Lin Yan did just now was to release these powers all at once. Consume a lot of physical strength in exchange for strength that exceeds the limit in a short period of time. Burning itself like a flame. This is an extremely powerful and dangerous technique. To master it requires strict training and strong control. Just like the swordsmanship Lin Yan previously demonstrated in the battle between the world's greatest swordsmen, it is a fighting skill that has undoubtedly reached the divine realm. Seeing Kuina's shocked look, Lin Yan smiled softly. Do you want to learn? I'll teach you. Think. Kuina answered without hesitation. Although she probably couldn't understand the realm Lin Yan was talking about, this did not prevent Kuina from realizing the power of this skill. Needless to say, this is not something that can be learned easily. The Lin Yan in front of her was actually willing to teach her such a secret technique. This alone made Kuina's heart filled with emotion. How can a girl refuse? However, facing such a girl, Lin Yan reached out and tapped her forehead. As said before, this is a powerful and dangerous technique. If you cannot control it perfectly, it will cause great harm to yourself. Even Lin Yan planned to teach Kuina after careful consideration. First of all, Kuina's swordsmanship talent is undoubtedly top-notch. Lin Yan also wants to see where she can reach. Secondly, it is also because of the existence of the Holy Grail in the Netherworld. No matter what goes wrong with Kuina in the subsequent training, she can use Yusa's Holy Grail to recover. But even so, training can be hard and it can be painful. I'm not afraid. Don't be so hasty to agree. Make sure you agree beforehand. You may suffer far more pain than you imagine. Even hell is probably about the same. Lin Yan looked at Kuina very seriously and said. No power comes without price. This is especially true for the fighter jets arriving at God's domain. Unimaginable hardship is the most basic thing. If you want to obtain combat skills that exceed the limits, these are things that cannot be overcome. As I said before, this technology is extremely dangerous. If you are not careful, it will even leave a psychological shadow. I can understand if you decide to give up. As he spoke, Lin Yan's tone paused slightly. I have other things here that can make you stronger, but this method is the fastest. You don't have to rush to answer. Come to me after you think clearly. Lin Yan said to Kuina. His expression was indescribably serious. With his infinite martial arts ability, there are many abilities that can make Kuina stronger. The reason why he specifically selected this ability is that in addition to the reasons mentioned before, Lin Yan also wanted to confirm Kuina's determination. For the strongest, it is a necessary quality to move forward without fear of life and death. Thinking about it, Lin Yan reached out and touched Kuina's head. Of course, if you want to change the training method, my evaluation of you will not be lowered. Even among all the things I have mastered, this ability can be called the Way of Shira. I know, I will seriously consider it. This time Kuina did not refute Lin Yan. He just nodded his head seriously. As Lin Yan said, she needs to seriously think about the consequences of agreeing and whether she can persist. Lin Yan doesn't talk nonsense. I'm afraid if you want to master this ability, the price you pay is the same. After saying goodbye to Lin Yan, Kuina went back to think about it seriously, but Lin Yan had no intention of leaving and just sat quietly waiting for Kuina's decision. As said before, this way of fighting beyond the limits. Even among all the skills that Lin Yan has mastered now, it can be regarded as the most dangerous one in the world. It is difficult to imagine the mental state of the person who invented this technology at the time. But as the saying goes, giving and returning are equal things. Once successfully mastered, the enhancements brought are also huge. The magnitude of the increase is terrifying. Calculated based on the average physique of a person in the pirate world, an ordinary person may be able to obtain the same power as Koshiro. Then wait until the moon and stars become scarce. At a certain moment, Lin Yan suddenly opened his eyes and looked straight at Kuina, who was walking towards her not far away. The girl's face was full of determination. Teacher, I've thought about it. Then under Lin Yan's admiring eyes, the girl spoke slowly but firmly. If I am afraid of the so-called hell, then my dream of being the world's greatest swordsman is just a joke. So, please train me. That being the case, there's not much to say. Clearly recognizing the burning flame in Kuina's eyes, Lin Yan finally nodded slightly. There is hell ahead, but since it is such a tenacious determination, resurrection from the ashes or falling into the abyss is Kuina's price. Soon, the agreed time arrived as scheduled. On this day, Koshiro came to the dojo as usual. But what was different from usual was that the man's face was full of seriousness today. The agreement with Kuina also needs to be concluded today. It was rare for him to bring his own sword. Under the surprised gazes of all the disciples, Koshiro sat quietly in front of the dojo without saying a word, as if waiting for something. Everyone started whispering in surprise. Hey, master, what happened today? I do not know. Could it be that someone wants to kick the gym? Shush. Don't talk nonsense. The disciples in the dojo watched this scene with great confusion, but Koshiro had no intention of explaining it. Today, he will fight with all his strength. As if aware of Koshiro's solemnity, the dojo became extremely silent, and everyone stared blankly without daring to say a word. Until two people appeared. Big, senior sister? However, after seeing Kuina's current appearance, everyone was shocked, including Koshiro, who looked at his daughter with some surprise. The changes are so great. If the previous Kuina had a slightly cold personality, she was still a very gentle and lovely girl. So now Kuina feels heavy pressure all over her body, like a sword about to be unsheathed. And this pressure. Koshiro couldn't help but narrowed his eyes slightly. He has seen this kind of momentum before. It's not just a matter of momentum, but also powerful blood energy. Koshiro has seen this momentum in many strong men who have fallen into hell and struggled to climb out. In the end, what happened? Why did my daughter undergo such a change in just a few days? What happened to that adult's training? Even Koshiro was completely confused at this point. However, at this moment, Kuina had slowly walked up to Koshiro. Looking at Koshiro, who had a rare expression of confusion, she suddenly smiled softly. Father, I'm back from hell, the girl said softly. Now, I get to decide on my dream. Kuina's voice was soft. But make sure everyone present can hear it. The past few days. It is undoubtedly hell for girls. Although Lin Yan had warned before, Kuina still underestimated the price of mastering this power. Several times she thought she was going to die. That is not a thing for training people at all. But she persevered in the end and gained strength that she had never imagined before. For this, Kuina is very grateful. Hell. What? Looking at the greatly changed Kuina in front of him, Koshiro murmured something, and immediately turned his attention to Lin Yan on the other side. Lin Yan just smiled and spoke, "You'll be shocked." Yes, Koshiro will definitely be shocked. Even Lin Yan was a little moved by Kuina's tenacity during the hell training of the past few days. That kind of courage to move forward without fear of life and death is the cornerstone of becoming the strongest. Koshiro now. There is nothing that can hinder Kuina anymore. In that hell-like training, Kuina has developed a strong heart in the true sense, which is also the reason for the drastic change in the girl's temperament. What Kuina needs to do now is to end the agreement between the two. I see. Although the adult in front of him is still mysterious to this day, Koshiro can profoundly see the changes in Kuina. In this case, there is nothing more to say. Just fight with all your strength. Thinking about it, Koshiro slowly drew his sword. Then it was probably the first time he looked at his daughter very seriously, the first time he regarded Kuina as a real opponent. Please enlighten me. Koshiro roared angrily, holding his beloved sword tightly. Then take action without mercy, Ito Ryu Shishigesh. The sharp sword exploded in an instant. At this moment, Koshiro had used all his strength and did not hold back because the person opposite was Kuina. As he said, fighting with all your strength is the highest courtesy one swordsman can give to another swordsman. Under everyone's expressions, the unrivaled sword light struck Kuina mercilessly, as if it was about to split the girl in half in the next second. Just before the sword light was about to arrive, Kuina finally moved. Ha! With a loud cry, Kuina mobilized all her strength in an instant, and at the cost of a huge amount of physical exertion, she gained superpowers in a short period of time. With an all-out explosion, you can probably only hold on for a few seconds. But that's enough. Varied. Koshiro's expression finally changed, and he saw that Kuina's body began to suffuse with blood, which was a sign that the blood had evaporated. But there was no time to stop him, and the sword light far beyond his imagination struck him. The speed was so fast that Koshiro almost had no time to react. Is this really Kuina? Suppressing the shock in his heart, Koshiro could only grit his teeth and continue to use his sword moves. The confrontation between the two broke out in lightning. It also ends in the electric light. Koshiro stopped his movements and silently stared at the beloved sword in his hand that had been cut into two parts. He was silent for a long time. As Lin Yan said, he was really shocked. The sudden burst of speed and power far exceeded Koshiro's expectations. He was not careless and undoubtedly used his full strength. But in the end, it was just one move away. Even if the winner is still yourself. According to the rules of swordsmen, the person who finally stands on the field is the winner. Koshiro was still standing unscathed. But Kuina had already passed out due to the huge physical exertion. The sword she had glimpsed just now had exhausted all the girl's strength. Sleep peacefully, you worked hard. Lin Yan supported Kuina, who had fallen asleep, with a smile on her lips. After carefully placing Kuina, Lin Yan turned to look at Koshiro. The agreement has been concluded, right? Koshiro also looked at Kuina, who had fallen asleep. At this moment, the girl had a lot of bloodline on her body, which was the remnant of blood that had been evaporated during the previous outbreak regardless of the cost. Looking at Kuina like this, Koshiro's eyes flashed with confusion, but in the end he nodded heavily. I lost. Even if the last person standing is still you. But the moment the swordsman's sword broke, Koshiro had already lost. Even he didn't expect that Kuina would be able to do this in the end. It cannot be said that it far exceeded expectations. It can already be called a shock. Okay, then I'll take Kuina back. This girl is a bit too hardworking. Seeing Koshiro admit defeat, Lin Yan nodded with satisfaction, then picked up Kuina without saying a word, turned around and walked towards the back mountain. Although I can understand Kuina's determination to defend her dream at all costs. But the girl worked too hard. He actually used all his strength in an instant, and it was only natural that he would pass out after exhaustion. Still need a lesson. Looking at this scene, Koshiro did not stop him, but a trace of relief flashed unconsciously in his eyes. I did it. So naturally there is nothing to say about what happened next. After taking Kuina back to the mountain and briefly treating her, Lin Yan just sat there, waiting for Kuina to wake up. Well, he didn't have to wait long. Soon, Kuina woke up with a cry. Did I succeed? Probably because she had just woken up. The girl's eyes looked a little confused, but this was the first question she asked. After all, it depends on whether you can continue to fulfill your dream. Although after going through hellish training, Kuina already has a strong heart and will not give up on her dream no matter what. But on the road to pursuing dreams, it would be a pity without Koshiro's support. Then, just when the girl was thinking wildly, boom, Lin Yan gave her a headbutt without hesitation. Pain? Tears instantly appeared in Kuina's eyes, and now everything was clear. Old teacher. What are you doing? The girl sat up aggrievedly and complained with blood and tears to Lin Yan in front of her. I was already like this. Is it too much to just hit her with a headbutt? However, Lin Yan just snorted coldly. Do you want to die? Lin Yan glared at Kuina with great dissatisfaction. This is also a matter of course, as said before. Fighting beyond the limit is an extremely dangerous way of fighting, and Lin Yan was given to Kuina as a trump card. Kuina has been reminded of the dangers of this thing more than once during training. This guy turned out to be pretty good. When fighting Koshiro, he didn't reveal his trump card from the beginning, and even squeezed himself until he passed out. It's really yours. Fortunately, Koshiro is not an enemy. If he encounters a pirate, Kuina will not have enough life after passing out. Hey. Seeing Lin Yan looking a little angry, for some reason, Kuina suddenly wasn't angry at all, and she even couldn't help but feel a little warmth in her heart. The girl laughed stupidly, and then approached Lin Yan in a flattering manner. Teacher, I was wrong. I won't dare to do it next time. And next time? No more. Seeing the girl trying to get away with it, Lin Yan was silent for a moment, and then under Kuina's surprised look, he suddenly grabbed the girl's head. Teacher. Do not move. Lin Yan moved Kuina's head to his eyes, the lines of Sharingan in his eyes flashed away, and Kuina was stunned for a moment. After reacting, the girl quickly protested. Teacher, what did you just say? It's just some restrictions given to you. Lin Yan snorted. I should have told you before that this ability has drawbacks, right? So for you, a disobedient student, I decided to limit your ability. Lin Yan said this very calmly. I've added some restrictions to you. It's okay to use this ability normally, but don't think about using it like before. Of course, if your life is really in danger, this restriction will be automatically lifted. Of course, I don't want that day to happen. Kuina suddenly fell silent. Then under Lin Yan's somewhat surprised eyes, he suddenly hugged her up. Teacher, I like you the most. Kuina's heart was filled with emotion. How could she not know that Lin Yan was just worried about herself, saying that he was limiting his abilities, but in fact he just didn't want to get himself hurt. Go. Come down first and then talk. Lin Yan pulled Kuina down speechlessly. This recent period. This little girl is really getting more and more arrogant. Talking about business. Be more serious. Yes, Kuina responded crisply and stopped pestering Lin Yan. Instead, she sat obediently on the grass and looked at Lin Yan in front of her with flashing eyes. Teacher, shall we continue training? Kuina asked expectantly. She was looking forward to becoming stronger. Of course, what's more important is that during training, she is always alone with Lin Yan, and Kuina already likes this feeling. Although Lin Yan was very strict during training. But whenever training ends, Lin Yan will reveal his gentle side. Kuina is happy with this. Unknowingly, this mysterious man in front of him has become his most important existence, even more important than his father. The so-called girlish feelings are always poetry. That's probably what it means. Lin Yan didn't notice that something was wrong with the way Kuina looked at him. After hearing the girl's question, he nodded seriously. Of course, you still need to practice more. Although he had defeated Koshiro by surprise before, he had fulfilled his promise. But the current Kuina is far from being called a strong person. As his first student, Lin Yan also planned to let Kuina develop in an all-round way before leaving. A true strong man. There can be no shortcomings. At least there shouldn't be any obvious shortcomings. I understand. Let's get started. After hearing Lin Yan's answer, Kuina immediately spoke enthusiastically. I can spend some time alone with the teacher again. The girl thought with some excitement. Looking at Lin Yan in front of her, Kuina smiled unconsciously, and then suddenly looked straight at the man in front of her as if she remembered something. What's that look in your eyes? Sensing Kuina's suddenly intense gaze, Lin Yan tilted his head in confusion. Teacher, am I considered your qualified student now? Kuina, however, didn't answer the question and asked with great anticipation. Lin Yan was stunned for a moment, but still nodded seriously. Yes, what's the matter? After Kuina withstood the hellish test, Lin Yan recognized the girl in front of him, and he was convinced that Kuina would definitely become his favorite disciple. The answer at this time was without hesitation. So Kuina smiled even more happily. Teacher, by now, you should have told me your name, right? And what do you look like? Kuina asked excitedly and expectantly. Ever since I met Lin Yan. She had never seen what Lin Yan looked like, and she didn't even know his name. Of course, it was impossible for Kuina not to care at all. But Kuina remained obedient and didn't ask any more questions. The teacher naturally has his reasons for hiding his appearance and name. Kuina has always thought like this. However, at this moment, she had completed the agreement with her father and had also received the teacher's approval. Kuina felt that it was finally time to ask. Lin Yan was a little confused for a moment. Although it is not clear what the consequences will be after uncovering the disguise of Wushangmao, out of caution, Lin Yan has always adhered to the taboo. So faced with Kuina's inquiry, Lin Yan touched his chin and pondered for a moment, then shook his head. How should I put it? Because of some special reasons, I can't tell you your name and appearance yet. Oh. Kuina suddenly shrugged her head in disappointment. Seeing Kuina like this, Lin Yan scratched his head. How about this? Before I leave, I will leave you something, which can be regarded as a token. When I come back to find you, you can recognize me with the token. Lin Yan suggested with a smile. Just like the method taught to little Hancock, the personal test is effective, but I don't know if Kuina will be shocked when she knows her true identity. However, what Lin Yan didn't expect was that Kuina didn't care about tokens at all, but her expression changed drastically and she grabbed Lin Yan's sleeve. Teacher, you want to leave?